something cracked open this week, and the entire entertainment world felt the shockwave. For years, Todd Tucker stayed quiet, calculated, and measured, but suddenly, without any warning, he stepped forward swinging harder than anyone predicted. And right in the center of his frustration stands Kandi Burruss, the woman who built a full-blown empire. The woman known for keeping her image spotless is now facing a storm of pressure, accusations, and behind-the-scenes truths she can no longer outrun. According to Todd, the hidden tensions, the unspoken issues, and the cover-ups in their world have finally hit a breaking point, and what he just brought to light has everyone wondering the same thing. Is this the moment everything collapses? What you're about to hear isn't the polished narrative. It's not the edited storyline. The cameras show this as the raw reality coming from behind closed doors, a version of events that flips everything you thought you knew about Todd, Kandi, their marriage, and the secrecy wrapped around their empire. And trust me, this is just the beginning. What's coming goes far beyond reality TV drama, rumors, or relationship mess. This story dives into the pressure, the power moves, and the private battles happening behind the scenes of one of entertainment's most watched couples, Todd Tucker and Kandi Burruss. For years, fans saw them smiling, building businesses, expanding their brand, and standing together on screen. But buried underneath the polished highlights and picture-perfect posts was a growing tension that finally exploded in full public view.
Todd's recent comments didn't sound like a husband simply venting. They sounded like a man who finally reached the end of his patience. A man who felt overshadowed, unheard, and tired of being labeled the villain. Someone who had decided it was time to speak on the lies he believes have damaged not just his image, but the foundation of their partnership itself. And now Kandi, the powerhouse, the mogul, the hit-making songwriter, finds herself under a spotlight she never asked for. A spotlight revealing cracks, contradictions, and choices she thought would stay hidden. In this deep dive, we're breaking down the full story, what Todd actually said, why he said it now, and the real emotional battles Kandi has been fighting behind the scenes. You won't believe who stepped in. You won't believe what came out. And when you hear what pushed Todd to his breaking point, that's where things get unbelievable, because the deeper you go into their story, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just marriage trouble. This is about loyalty, money, pressure, ego, sacrifice, and a truth both of them tried to protect for way too long. But the question is, why did everything come crashing down now? Let's break it open. Long before Todd Tucker finally spoke out, long before the interviews, the headlines, and the tension, there were signs. Quiet signs. Moments fans noticed but couldn't quite connect. A shift in Todd's tone. A change in Kandi's energy. A distance that seemed off for a couple who once prided themselves on openness and honesty. But behind the scenes, pressure was building for years. Todd Tucker didn't walk into Kandi Burruss's life with privilege or a celebrity safety net. He built his own lane, shaped his own identity, and carved out his place in the entertainment industry with grit. But marrying someone as powerful and influential as Kandi came with expectations he never fully prepared for. Based on what he said publicly in interviews and online, Todd felt like he was expected to constantly prove himself. Expected to smile through criticism, expected to stay easygoing, expected to be quiet whenever situations painted him unfairly. And for a long time, he complied. But the bigger their empire grew, the smaller he felt his own voice became. Fans saw the restaurants, the TV shows, the brand deals. They saw the success, but what they didn't see was the private friction over control, decision-making, and who carried the emotional weight of their empire. People close to the couple often describe Todd as the planner, the strategist, someone who sees the long game. But emotionally, Todd struggled with something he rarely voiced publicly, feeling overshadowed. Not necessarily by Kandi herself, but by the world surrounding her. Kandi Burruss is a cultural force, a Grammy-winning writer, a reality TV veteran, a businesswoman with a fiercely loyal fan base who protects her at all costs. When she speaks, people listen. When she cries, fans defend her. When she explains her side, the public stands with her. Todd never received that same grace. Anytime the couple disagreed publicly or clashed on camera, fans sided with Kandi before Todd could even finish a sentence. And while he tried to ignore it, the imbalance wore him down. But the real turning point wasn't public. It was at home. According to Todd, Their arguments started shifting from minor disagreements to emotionally heavy confrontations, not explosive, but draining. Kandi's schedule was overwhelming. Todd was juggling his own projects. And somewhere in between the chaos, their communication collapsed in ways neither anticipated. Todd felt unheard. Kandi felt misunderstood. Both felt unappreciated. The moment that changed everything came during a conversation Todd later hinted about, a moment where he finally said something he'd been holding inside far too long. "People think I'm just here to follow your lead, but I have my own identity, my own ideas, my own vision." Those words didn't stem from anger. They came from exhaustion. It was the moment Todd realized staying silent was costing him more than speaking. That breaking point didn't just affect their marriage. It changed the way Todd carried himself moving forward. What followed exposed not just cracks in communication, but a deeper issue neither wanted to face. And when that truth came to the surface, nothing between them was ever the same. From the outside, Todd Tucker looked like he had it all: successful wife, beautiful family, thriving businesses, and a lifestyle most people could only dream of. But behind the scenes, Todd's world looked nothing like the glamorous posts fans saw, while Kandi's career soared to new heights. Todd's life was slowly heading in the opposite direction, quietly and painfully. At first, he didn't notice it. He was too focused on supporting Kandi, too determined to prove he wasn't just a reality TV husband riding his wife's success. He wanted to build alongside her, not behind her, but support comes with a cost, and Todd ended up paying more than he ever expected. He turned down opportunities. He postponed projects. He even declined producing gigs that could have elevated his name, all believing it was temporary. Thinking once Kandi stabilized her commitments, they'd shift focus to his dreams too. But temporary turned into habit. Habit became sacrifice. Sacrifice became frustration. Each year, Kandi became more booked, more busy, more consumed with commitments, leaving Todd to become the anchor holding everything together. The businesses, the schedules, the household, the family. Todd became the structure. Kandi became the storm, and storms don't slow down. While the world labeled Kandi a workaholic, Todd called it something else, a warning. He watched her drown in responsibilities, shows, tours, writing rooms, endorsements, investments, events stacked so high that nothing was left for home. He tried to be patient, understanding, calm, but patience doesn't erase resentment. The more he carried alone, the more invisible he felt. The more invisible he felt, the more unheard he became. Whenever he expressed exhaustion, Kandi dismissed it. Whenever he asked for balance, she said soon. Whenever he tried to explain how lonely the partnership felt, she threw obligations, deadlines, or commitments into the discussion. He didn't want to dim her success. He admired her for it. But what do you do when the career you cheer for becomes the career that drains your relationship? What do you do when your partner is center stage while you slowly fade backstage? Silence was no longer strength, it was suffering, and that suffering shaped everything about what was coming. Because Todd didn't snap randomly, his breaking point was built piece by piece, sacrifice after sacrifice, with no acknowledgement. And once someone feels unseen, their patience collapses fast. So what pushed Todd from quiet resentment to public honesty? For years, Kandi Burruss maintained an image of perfection, strong entrepreneur, devoted wife, loving mother, brilliant businesswoman. But behind that image, Todd started noticing cracks no one else seemed to catch. It began with little inconsistencies in stories she told about finances, business deals, or appearances. Moments where the narrative Kandi presented publicly didn't quite match what Todd knew privately. He brushed it off at first, blaming stress or miscommunication. But slowly, patterns formed. Todd realized things were being exaggerated, spun or hidden not always maliciously, but strategically curated to protect the brand she built for decades. And Todd, who valued transparency, felt trapped. He wanted truth, partnership, alignment, but the omissions created a distance he couldn't ignore. A turning point came during one of Kandi's major business launches. Todd believed certain financials and partnerships were already secured. Yet, behind closed doors, he learned the full story didn't match what he was told. That betrayal hit hard, not because she intended to deceive him, but because it proved he wasn't part of decisions he thought they made together. It undermined his identity as husband, partner, and leader in the family. Tension seeped into their social circle. Friends noticed. Family noticed. Fans noticed subtle changes in Todd's tone online, sharper humor, colder comments. A frustrated edge. Then came the moment that pushed everything over the edge. A private conversation about finances and family that spiraled unexpectedly. Todd confronted what he believed were lies. Kandi defended herself. Voices rose. Emotions snapped. It wasn't violent, but it was raw and deeply personal. That conversation lingered with Todd for months, replaying in his mind, mixing love with frustration. He tried to move quietly. He tried to let it slide. But silence became unbearable, and that's when Todd went public. Not for revenge. Not for drama. But for acknowledgement. He wanted the world to understand the pressure, the sacrifices, and the emotional weight he carried for years. And once the first crack appears in an empire built on image, the whole structure starts shaking. The tension between Todd and Kandi finally erupted into a public moment no one could overlook. It wasn't staged. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't produced for TV.